right, we are now live. Welcome to the show, everybody. Next week is Thanksgiving, which I am very much looking forward to, but man, grocery prices just refuse to go down. Worse, they're actually outpacing inflation. So whose fault is this and how do we fix it? Also, George Soros continues his attack on conservative voices. A new report uncovered that he donates to a group that seeks a digital regulator, which they pinky swear will be unbiased, even as that same group exclusively targets right-wing content. Rasmussen and Heartland did another poll, another bad news poll, this time asking young voters if they would approve of an AI-run government, basically, and way too many people said yes. And on Unhinged, Trump Derangement Syndrome might actually have developed into a real pathology. Does this mean that it can be treated? Will we ever find a cure? Donate now to, I'm kidding. Anyway, we are going to talk about all of this on episode 520 of the In the Tank podcast. All right, welcome to the In the Tank podcast. I am Linnea Lukin, your host, and we also, as always, have Jim Lakely, Vice President and Director of Communications at the Heartland Institute. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing just great. Thanksgiving, I guess, same thing for you, is my favorite holiday. There is just nothing like the smells that are in your house on a Thanksgiving afternoon, and it's I just love it. I make a great turkey. It's going to be a great time, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Absolutely. We also have Sam Karnick, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute. Sam, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Linnea. I hope you're well, and I do wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. You know, I've been doing a little research lately, thinking about what life's going to be like under new Mayor Zoran Mamdani in New York City and Katie Wilson in Seattle, as they're both very famous socialists, and I think they're going to bring a very positive revolution to our country. And so I did a little research, and I found a couple of interesting insights, which I'd like to share really briefly here. A man living in the Soviet Union is lining up to buy bread, and he gets to the front and he's told there's none left. Annoyed, the man goes on a tirade complaining about the poor conditions and the incompetence of the government. A soldier hearing this says to him, "You better be careful. In the old days, it would have been," points his gun right at the man's head. The man apologized and he shuffles off. When he gets back home, his wife asks him, "Husband, your hands are empty. Have they run out of bread again?" The man replies, "It's even worse than that. They've run out of bullets." So that's one of the things I think we're going to be dealing with in these bread lines in the stores in New York City. Then also, I think, you know, we have a whole lot of political correctness and censorship that goes with these new socialist governments. Here's an interesting insight into that. In Soviet Russia, a man calls the police. "Comrade Commissar, I want to report that my parrot escaped." The policeman says, "Comrade, we have more important things to do than look for your parrot." And the man says, "I'm not expecting you to find him, Conrad. I just want you to know that I do not share his opinions." Oh, that's what life's going to be like here in the good old US of A.
Comedy jokes are back in season, everybody. Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah. All right. As always, we also have Chris Talgo, Editorial Director and Socialism Research Fellow at the Heartland Institute. Chris, do you have Soviet Union jokes for us?
About a lot of Soviet Union jokes, but I do have something I want to just make sure that Jim knows is that the Bears and Steelers are playing in a couple of days, and I hope he's ready for this.
Oh, I'm ready.
I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Yeah, I'm ready. You're going to be very sad that Sunday afternoon. It's not going to be as bright a Thanksgiving for you as it will be for me.
We shall see.
All right. Well, before we get started, you guys, as always, if you want to support the show, you can go to heartland.org/inthetank and you can donate there. Please also click the thumbs up to like the video. You can do it right now. If you're watching on YouTube, on Rumble, anywhere, hit the like. If you're watching it on X, you can share it, whatever you want to do. Remember that sharing it helps to break through some of those algorithms that try to suppress conservative voices. And even just leaving a comment helps too. If you're an audio listener, you can help us out by leaving a nice review. Alrighty, so let's get into it. We're going to get right into it today because we have quite a bit to cover, as always, really. So first, starting off with Unhinged. Okay, so this one's pretty fun. Is Trump Derangement Syndrome a real pathology? So a psychotherapist by the name of Jonathan Alpert recently went on Fox News to talk about how a good chunk of his patients, and surely I would extrapolate from that therapy patients at large, genuinely suffer from life-disrupting anxiety and distress over just hearing Trump's name or seeing him on TV. But we'll let you guys hear it straight from the horse's mouth here, so we can play that clip, Andy.
Identify it for us. You're in a session and you pick up on what?
Well, Harris, it doesn't take long for me to pick up on this. People are obsessed with Trump. They're fixated, they're hyper-fixated on Trump. And they talk about some of the features of this disorder. They can't sleep, they feel traumatized by Mr. Trump, they feel restless. I had one patient who said she couldn't enjoy a vacation because anytime she saw Trump in the news or on her device, she felt triggered. So this is a profound pathology, and I would even go so far as to call it the defining pathology of our time.
These people come to you for the things that you described. Can't sleep, traumatized, perhaps depression. I don't want to put words in your mouth. But at first, you are there to treat an illness, a disorder of some kind. And what you figure out is the trigger.
Well, and Trump is the trigger for many of these people. And to be that fixated on a figure, on a person, it's simply not healthy. And our country has strayed so far away from where we once were. If you look at in the 80s when President Reagan was shot, people were united. He famously said, "I hope you're all Republicans," to the surgeons. And the response was, "Today, Mr. President, we're all Republicans." But our country has lost that. We've strayed so far from that unity.
Mm-hmm. And what do you see? Because you told me off camera 3/4 of your patient load right now has what you're calling this TDS.
Well, 3/4 of my patients will present with a lot of these symptoms, and within probably 5 minutes of seeing me, their hatred for Trump comes up. So if you're that hyper-focused on Trump, that's a real issue, and it's worth being treated.
Wow. All right. So it's definitely worth being treated. That's for sure. Anyway, I thought this was really good for Unhinged. Jim brought it up, I believe, because we've all seen this behavior, right? And frankly, I suspect that genuine TDS is responsible for a lot of the segments on Unhinged that we've played in the past. So guys, I just, there's not a whole lot to say about this one other than just expressing, that it's interesting that it's coming up in, on the therapist's couch at this point. I guess I should have thought of that before, but it hadn't really struck me that people are actually getting treated for TDS, basically.
You know what's really scary? It's that a lot of these people, because I have a couple of friends and family members who do have, one is a very severe case, actually. Even the 4 years when he was out of office and Biden was in, almost every day he would text me something about Trump. So it's not just when Trump is in office. It's just the sheer existence of him. That's what just kind of blew my mind, because it never would have occurred to me for 4 years, during, the Biden, presidency to ever do that, let alone after he's out of the presidency. So it's just a little anecdote that I just found incredible.
Yeah, I've seen it argued that there were some people who were like this for Obama, and I'm sure that there are some, but it's not anywhere near the levels of, like you said, the out of office anxiety that the name of the person brings up is crazy. Sam?
Well, I just think it's interesting that what you said about Obama is appropriate. With Obama, there was a sort of a almost pathological admiration for him at times, if the Nobel Prize Committee is any indication. And even Bill Clinton, as polarizing as he was, there wasn't this kind of reaction to him. And think about this, even Hillary Clinton. People on the right just don't obsess about Hillary Clinton, and they didn't obsess about Hillary Clinton in 2016, or even when the situation in Libya happened, where Americans were murdered there because of the horrible decisions by, frankly, the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama. There wasn't this kind of reaction from people. This is something that I hate to be sound partisan here, but it's something that is endemic to the left, and the right has its nuts, no question about it. There's crazy people out there on the right, but in general, there's more of an acceptance of the system, and that if you win, you win, and if you lose, you lose, and you go with your life. It's not the way it is with the left. If you lose, then everything's been destroyed. It's really quite terrible.
Yeah, well, and I think you're probably pointing at something very true. That's a good headline from Zero Hedge, very typical for them in terms of it's funny. Trump derangement syndrome is real and it's driving therapists crazy. I don't doubt that one, but I think maybe it does just have something fundamental to do with the type of personalities that are attracted to different types of politics. Yeah. So, the people who love the kind of socialist left, especially, or the, just pathological altruism, knee-jerk stuff of the left. They love virtue signaling. They love all of that stuff. The social justice types, they might just naturally freak out more over politicians and stuff. Because you'll see conservatives protest or something if someone that they don't like gets into office, but generally it's not, world-class freak out like we have in our unhinged drop there at the start. That's far more prevalent on the left. But yeah, it's very, very interesting to see therapists talking about it and not blaming Trump for it. Because I don't think Trump is he's a unique figure, of course, but he's not, uniquely polarizing in terms of his views, right? Like he doesn't have any extreme positions.
Well, I think that's the interesting point, is that there was a whole lot of pushback against Reagan, and people called him stupid and the like. And they called George W. Bush stupid. I don't know. I won't make any comment about the plausibility of that. But the interesting thing is, I don't think that Reagan or Bush was anywhere near the threat to the current or the then current system that Trump represented right there in 2016 and has ever since. Trump is a threat because he will do stuff. He will break things, and he will move people around, and he will change the way things are done. And that is something that we weren't going to get that from Reagan. He's the one who signed amnesty for people in this country illegally. So we weren't going to get that from Reagan, and he's the one who raised spending radically. And so that wasn't Reagan. And George W. Bush, same thing. He was no threat to the system. Trump is, especially because Trump is so strangely anti-war and pro-American. He's willing to go to war. He's willing to use force, but only in the interest of the American people, not necessarily in the interest of American multinational corporations.
Yeah, I mean, just to weigh in here a little bit. I think it was very good that the therapist brought up the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, and because how soon we forget, Trump was also shot, and he came millimeters from having his brains splattered on the attendees behind him on national television. And we even Trump supporters seem to very quickly forget that. I know it's You want to forget it because it was so traumatic. But millions of people on social media celebrated that. And the only problem they had with it is that the guy missed and only hit him in the ear. That was shared by many, 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 maybe not millions, maybe I'll go ahead and say millions, because a lot of people were thinking it and were smart enough not to post it and to expose what ghouls and absolutely moral reprobates they are. This is, it's good, I think. TDS, at least for this one therapist, it's it requires a clinical definition. I don't understand it, and a lot of us here can't understand it. We can witness it, but I still, to the life of me, can't understand how and why the election of Donald Trump and the the joy of his supporters in his election now twice broke so many brains. It broke the brains of people who run Hollywood, which is one of the, I think, main reasons why Hollywood is spiraling down into the down the drain. And it's not, the products of Hollywood are not they're not quite the mass, cultural events that they used to be, because they can't stop hating Trump and putting and just having it part of their products in their hatred of Donald Trump. You mentioned that the left, people on the left hated George Bush, and there was a website, I remember this. It was Chimpy McBush Hitler. That was what they called George W. Bush. So this kind of mania. Now, look, it's not exclusively on the left that people are completely deranged about in their opposition to the president, but let's be honest. It is much more widespread on the left, and there's a reason for that. Because Trump derangement is not just accepted among Democrats, just run-of-the-mill Democrats and liberals and people on the left. It's rewarded. It's been raised into a virtue on the left to publicly express hatred for Donald Trump in almost every setting imaginable. And I hadn't thought about this until we started this segment. This is perfect for a Thanksgiving episode of In the Tank, because it is the left and their hatred for Donald Trump that has ruined many, many Thanksgiving celebrations across this country. I can't imagine, it was never a thing, nobody talked about it, that conservatives would ruin a rare and historic, because every Thanksgiving with your family is historic. We are on this planet for a short amount of time. Every Thanksgiving that you ruin with politics is horrible, and you're the person at fault. I can't remember I have never brought up politics. I didn't like Barack Obama and his policies. I thought he was annoying as hell. I think he was completely overrated as an orator and all that stuff. But I wouldn't dream of ruining Thanksgiving by just going on and on and on about how much I didn't like Barack Obama. Never do that. That it just doesn't seem to be in the constitution of people on the right by and large. So yes, it is obvious at this point that there's something mentally wrong with you if you are obsessive every single day about how much you hate Donald Trump and hate all of his supporters. I hope a lot of you people out there, very few people with TDS are watching this podcast right now, but I would hope that if there is somebody in your family that has TDS, try to encourage them to get help. It is not healthy. It's not healthy for the people with it, and it is not healthy for the people around them. And it doesn't make any sense that you have no control over that. The American people voted, your guy didn't win or your gal didn't win. Tough. Move on with your life. These people that are politically possessed, but especially with TDS, are a plague. They really are mentally ill. If you cannot let go of your hatred of Donald Trump and have to bring it up in almost every social setting because you can't help yourself, check yourself. If you can't help yourself, you have a mental issue that you need professional help for. End of rant.
Tell us how you really feel, Jim.
Jeez.
We're sending you a meter too.
Breathe.
Yeah. I don't have
Breathe,
Trump
big guy.
derangement syndrome. I have what is it? Anti-Trump derangement syndrome, maybe. I don't know.
All right. Well, I didn't want to spend too much time on that, but I thought the audience would get a kick out of it, and I believe that they did. But we're going to get to a little bit more, well, I wouldn't say more serious topics, because it is pretty serious that a good portion of our populace is losing their minds. But we're gonna chat a little bit about food prices here, you guys. They are high, but why? So as I said at the top here, Thanksgiving is on the way. Some of our fellow American audience might have already bought their turkey, but even if you're not buying tons of food in anticipation of Thanksgiving dinner, you probably noticed that food costs are still pretty high, especially things like coffee. CNBC, take them as you will, but they reported in August that food costs remain high and could raise further with tariffs. They say even with no overall increase in food prices last month, and for them that would have been September. Nope, July. Wow. Okay. Americans are still paying more for tariff-sensitive staples like coffee, sugar, and bananas, and new import taxes could soon push those costs even higher. Food prices were unchanged from June to July, but remained at 2.9% higher than a year ago, which is above the Federal Reserve's target inflation rate of 2%. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index, that CPI report released. Now, some of these issues, they go on to explain, are because of natural shortages due to a bad season. And these numbers are from August again, but the CPI only updated last in September, it seems, from the chart that I was able to find online. So we're doing the best we can on this show here to provide you guys with the numbers that we have now. Since 2020, though, food costs have increased 26%, according to the CPI. Some of the same goods seeing the biggest price increases in the past year could become even more expensive under certain tariffs. About 75% of food products imported into the United States face import duties, especially in the 10 to 30% range. And coffee is one of the bigger ones. So Brazilian coffee has been subject to a 50% tariff, which is a cost U.S. roasters are likely to pass on. So they are either buying coffee from elsewhere or jacking prices a bit. So Sam, I wanted to go to you first on this. Looking at the CPI chart, which I forgot to send a link to Andy for. Sorry, Andy. It's pretty remarkable, though, how stable costs were in the 50s and 60s. And then they just take off into the 70s and they never stabilize again. Is it really all inflation? Like, is that entire, how you describe that entire chart there?
Well, the current affordability crisis is certainly caused purely by Biden-era inflation. The prices went up and they didn't come back down, and they're not going to come back down. That's not how things work. So what happens, though, is the reason you get this affordability crisis in certain things is that as the government pumps money into the economy, which is what they did during 2021, 2022, they pumped an incredible amount of money into the economy after the economy was already doing fine. That's the real problem you have, is that the economy was doing fine. It had recovered from the pandemic. It just goes up and or it goes down and then up. And so the economy was doing fine and the spending was going back down. But then and it was on a pace. This is one thing people don't know about, is that government spending was on a pace to get back to the original trend line from the pre-pandemic era. And it would have gone down to the trend line in March of 2021. It would have gone down if they hadn't raised spending. But then the moment you raise spending, obviously the spending goes up. And so it slowed down how it stopped, in fact, going down, and then it started up again. So if they had waited 2 months and not done that, we would not have had this inflation. Because the reason we get this inflation is because you're spending too much and you have deficit spending. And when you do that, the government monetizes it. It's a somewhat complicated process, but the fact is that you get inflation from excessive government spending and debt. And that's what we had. We had a couple of years of it. And so I look at the current so-called affordability crisis, whatever you want to call it. I call it a problem because it is a problem. And the funny thing is, it is kind of a crisis in the sense that it's temporary. I do think that the affordability crisis was strictly caused by the excessive government spending that led to inflation, and that you have to remember that when you get inflation, it has different effects in different areas. And so you have some things that are affected very badly by it and others that are less so. So you get these economic distortions. Well, once you get a handle on inflation by slowing the rise of government spending, which is what they've done now for 2 years, then things will slowly get back to normal. The problem is, of course, people suffer in the meantime. And there is also, I want to make this clear, is there's also a long-term trend in which housing has become more expensive, and in real terms, not just inflation, not just inflated dollars, but inflated adjusted dollars. Housing is becoming more expensive. We've talked about that here on this program before. And that is one of those distortions that comes from inflation, where some things are affected by it more than others. And so there are ways of repairing this, and we'll continue, I'm sure, in this episode and in future episodes to get into those solutions. But the big picture right now is that we're in I'd say, a temporary crisis, a temporary problem that was caused by a temporary vast increase in government spending and inflation. We need to get through this, and it would be really great if people could be calm about it. But I know it's difficult when things are tight. So, but in policy terms, we can't just say, well, some people are feeling a little pinch here or a big pinch, so we have to change the world. No, let's make sure that we only do what we need to do and what is right to do. The one thing would fix this right away: cut spending, federal spending in the United States by $1 trillion. It's completely doable. It would put us back on the old trend line. Do that. You'll fix everything. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, and Andy and I have been working in the background here to get some charts up for you guys, just so you can visualize what's going on a little bit. Andy, you sent me a chart that was a screenshot of the U.S. Consumer Price Index with like bar graph from 2021 to 2025 showing the monthly percent change. I think that would be a good thing to show in context to the audience. Yeah, that one. That, just how bad it was in 2022, thereabouts. Yeah, compared to now. So it's still going up, but it's not going up nearly as badly as it was then. And then also the one that I sent you, which is just the long-term consumer price index. There we go. Okay, so this is food in U.S. cities. One of my questions for you, Sam, is, why that inflection point? I mean, it was where it like totally changes slope there, right? So it's kind of going up through the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And then once you hit the mid to late 70s, it just completely changes direction. So
Yes.
what is that inflection point, do you think?
It comes from something that happened in 1971, when basically the U.S. was off the gold standard since really the FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt presidency, but we were kind of on the gold standard. And after World War II, we put all the world's currencies, tied them to the dollar, and kind of fakey tied the dollar to gold. And that was called the Bretton Woods system, and it did its job fairly well. But in 1971, Richard Nixon he stopped gold convertibility, where if you had a bunch of bonds, federal bonds, you could turn them in and get gold. That was the deal. Now, nobody would actually do that, but the fact that you could do it made those bonds gold standard, to coin a phrase. And so what happened, though, was Nixon took us off convertibility at that point, legally took us off. And so what that means is that we just have had a total fiat currency back since then. Fiat currency means the government says this is what it's worth, and that's all there is to it. And the market says, well, that's what it's worth to you, but it's not what it's worth to us. So you take this fiat currency since 1971. That's when it starts up. That's when the graph starts to head up. And then every time the government spends more than it takes in, the bonds become worth less because people don't want to buy bonds. That raises interest rates. That suppresses the economy. So you look at all the factors. If you cut government spending, good things happen. If you raise government spending, bad things happen. If you start to run a deficit and run up debt, even worse things happen. And if you look at this graph here, I've published at Life, Liberty, Property at the Heartland Institute and at my Substack, stkarnick.substack.com. I've published numerous graphs that show you how as the federal spending rises, inflation rises. As the federal debt rises, in particular, inflation rises. So, and that is because the dollar is not a real thing. It is only a medium of exchange. And when you add in extra dollars, as we do regularly, to cover that debt, it's called monetizing the debt. When you add in dollars, you have more dollars chasing the same amount of goods and services. Well, what's going to happen? The prices have to go up, but they will go up also. They will go up, as mentioned earlier, unevenly. Some prices will rise faster than others. So your turkey gets to be very skinny because they're harder to get, and it's harder to raise that supply very quickly. And above all, and you can see this from some graphs I did a few weeks ago on Life, Liberty, Property, housing. Housing, you can't just add housing supply instantaneously, unless we all want to live in tents. It can't be done. So that when you inflate, you really make housing more and more expensive. I have a graph that you can find on Life, Liberty, Property on the Heartland website and at my Substack. I have a graph that shows how housing has gotten more and more expensive starting in 1971. And that's the real problem.
So I've also seen people argue that food costs are rising in part due to like consolidation of grocery stores. And the argument that I had read was that there is a law that the government stopped enforcing around that same period of time that bans certain kinds of price discrimination where, like Walmart can't, or like a supplier isn't supposed to be able to give Walmart special deals over some local grocer or something for their goods. But they don't enforce that anymore. So what has been argued is that companies like Walmart are able to way easily outcompete smaller grocers. And it's not just a matter of scale on getting these like special deals with produce providers. And so it undercuts these small grocers, and then they have to like struggle to survive or close or whatever. So what about, I think in the chat you said that wasn't so much a factor.
Right.
Even though the numbers kind of, the inflection points are sort of the same.
But wait a second. We're talking here about the food. So food prices are still high. Why? Okay. So aside from the money printing and all that kind of stuff, which definitely adds to it, Linnea, I think that you're sort of on to the one of the big causes here, and that is consolidation in the processing places. It's not necessarily the grocery stores. Those are the end of the road there. Also, you got to keep in mind that to ship those to the grocery store, that costs more money because energy is up. To heat those stores costs more money. The air conditioning units, the freezers, the blah, blah, blah. So if you look at the profit margin of major grocery stores, including Walmart, Target, and Albertsons and all the big ones, it's like 1%. It's really, really I have worked at a grocery store. They're not making, just tons and tons of money. I think what the real root of the problem is the consolidation with one or two giant companies that totally dominate the beef market. Why is that? I saw a really interesting interview with a local rancher on Fox News a couple of days ago, and it just blew my mind how complicated the beef market is and how it is just totally monopolized and dominated by a couple of these mass producers. That same thing is happening with grains, with cereals, with all sorts of stuff. So I think that it's so easy to point the finger at the grocery store and say, oh, they're jacking up the prices so they can make a lot of money. No, they're not, because the grocery industry is very, very, competitive. It's, it's the regulations, it's the environmental regulations, it's all that stuff that is, I think, it really, impeding a free market. And just like Sam said, we don't have a free market with housing. We don't have a free market with, higher education. We don't have a free market with our food and grocery production either.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely definitely true. And as Chris pointed out, we had a couple of articles that we were going to touch on here that, say, even NPR admits that it's not the grocery store's fault. You see all sorts of whinging from leftists about price gouging, but grocery profit margins themselves are also down. So for decades, there's an article that we found that I think Sam posted from River News that explains about how grocery store profit margins have usually ranged from around 1% to 3%. And in 2023, the grocery store profit margin plunged to 1.6%. So they are not that to me sounds like they were trying hard to keep prices down. As we said, even NPR knows this. Gross profit margins of big name stores and brands are suffering. So if you scroll down, is this the NPR article? Let's go to NPR. Okay, if you scroll down in the NPR article, there's a couple of charts that show the actual, right there, gross profits of big name stores. So this is your Walmart, your Kroger, PepsiCo, all those guys. And look,
those are the manufacturers.
Oh yes. Well, yeah, the manufacturers would be like PepsiCo, Procter & Gamble, but Walmart and Kroger are not. Where'd you go? Go back up there. But Walmart and Kroger are grocery supermarket chains. But look, nobody's profit margins are getting better here. You are not being price gouged by these companies.
Right. Linnea, those are gross profit margins, and gross profit margins are before, that's just the cost of the things that you're getting to work with. So you have to add labor and marketing and things like that. Well, one of the things that's happening has been that because of changes in laws on the federal level and especially state and local level, people cost more now. Labor costs more. So you have a lot of labor in things like supermarkets and so forth, and so the costs go up, and they get squeezed because they can only raise prices so much, and they really try to resist, as you've seen by the full net profit margin is very low. Now, what Chris brought up about consolidation, industrial consolidation in the food industry, is an important issue. And it is, again, it's not a crisis of capitalism or a problem that capitalism has created. It's a crisis of crony capitalism that government has created. These companies get bigger and bigger and bigger, in part because our tax system encourages this business. Our regulatory system encourages this bigness. We need to change those things so that we can find out what, in fact, a free market system might look like in the good old US of A, because we don't have one or anything like it. And so that's the real problem that we need to solve. And frankly, we need to communicate this to people. And let's be very clear: the Trump administration has not been good at this. Although Scott Bessent, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry, but Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has been pretty right on things. And I think he has a good way of stating things. But the problem we have is that we do not have free market capitalism. We have crony capitalism. And I think if the people on the right and free market supporters were to make that point and be very clear about it day after day, the way we do here at the Heartland Institute, I think we could make a lot more progress in beating inflation and in creating greater affordability.
In terms of the food prices, I also do think that the tariffs did play a role, because why else would Trump say that he's going to drop the tariffs on beef and coffee to make them go down? So, I mean, generally kind of understand the argument for tariffs when you want to protect a budding industry. But last time I checked, we don't have a really great coffee industry in the United States. So I don't really understand why we put tariffs on coffee to begin with. I mean, the price of Dunkin' Donuts coffee, which I've been buying for years, is out of control. It is outrageous. I'm talking about the grinds, not even going to Dunkin'. I'm talking about just Dunkin' Donuts coffee at the grocery store. It's just out of this world.
Yeah, spending what is it, like $13 on a bag of ground Dunkin' coffee at
really,
Albertsons or Kroger or whatever.
Tariffs cannot create inflation, but what they do is like any tax, they create distortions. And so what you have here is that and why did Trump lower the tariffs on certain things and not on others? Well, it's to attend to those distortions. So to be fair to Trump, he is doing the right thing there. But tariffs generally, as I say, the tariffs cannot raise prices overall. They can't do it, because you only can do that by increasing the money supply faster than the increase in goods and services. That's the only way, and only the government can do that through the Federal Reserve. So tariffs are not raising prices overall. They're not causing inflation, but they do create these distortions in the system. But the bigger distortions are our tax system and the overall continuous day-to-day inflation, monetary inflation that we have. Our regulatory system is way out of whack. Why don't we have coffee industry in the United States? I don't know. See, I
think we don't. I think they can't grow coffee here.
I don't know that.
Pretty sure.
Maybe you can. Maybe we have our lumber industry has put out much more product than it ever did before because of changes in how they grow trees and things like that. And so I don't know that we couldn't grow coffee here, but even if we couldn't, the way the system is built is a crony system. It's not a free market system. And so that's all these distortions. We have to get rid of the ones that we know about and that are obvious and that government is doing, and then see what the economy would look like. And then we can say, well, we need to have no tariffs on coffee or low tariffs on coffee. Fine, you can figure that stuff out. But until you fix the overall system, we're going to run into these problems every day. And the proof of it is we do, and we have been, especially since 1971. So until we get rid of these incredible distortions that government has put in the economy, we're going to be arguing about these sorts of things all the time.
Alrighty, awesome. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on this stuff, but because we do have a couple more topics to get to, and I do want to tell our audience though that there is someone that we know who will never resort to tricky tactics and price gouging and the like on a product that might be very important to you, and that is Ira at Advisor Metals. A lot of people in the conservative, libertarian, and prepper spaces will hit you with ads for buying precious metals. And they're not wrong that they're a good investment, but you want to be careful about who you buy your metals from. A lot of scammers out there. But at In the Tank, we trust Advisor Metals over all of the other guys. And that's because we know that the person running the place is absolutely the best of the best. He is a great friend of liberty. Ira Bershatsky owns and is the managing member of Advisor Metals. He has decades of experience in precious metals and is the only person in the physical precious metals industry who has the Commodities Futures Trading Commission federal registration. What does that mean for you? Well, it means that everything Ira or a member of his team says to you actually has to be fully factual. So there's no sketchy sales pitch, no bait and switch. Ira is held to the highest ethical standards, and there is full transparency, which is way too lacking in too many places nowadays. If you want to diversify your investment portfolio and your savings, if you're planning for retirement and are concerned about economic uncertainty, and if you want a tangible asset that is easy to buy and sell, you can secure your assets with a wide range of physical precious metals by getting in touch with our friend Ira at Advisor Metals. He is going to make it super easy for you guys. Please visit climaterealismshow.com/metals, and you can leave your information for Ira and get started with investing in precious metals and expand your current portfolio. Again, you can go to climaterealismshow.com/medals. And when you talk to Ira, don't forget to tell him that we were the ones who sent you. This helps us, and it also helps you secure your financial future by diversifying with precious metals from Advisor Metals. Do not forget. All right. Thank you guys very much. The next thing that I would like to talk about here, you guys, is George Soros is the big boogeyman for pretty much everything. Everyone brings him up at some point or another. We really haven't talked about his influence very much on this show, but he is absolutely impacting the way that conservative media is able to spread or not spread online. So the Free Beacon released an exclusive report detailing the fact that George Soros gave $250,000 to the Center for Countering Digital Hate, which lobbies lawmakers for a so-called digital regulator and tries to get conservative voices off of the internet. The Washington Free Beacon reports the left-wing philanthropy funded by George Soros, the Open Society Foundation, bankrolls a British nonprofit that works to censor conservative news websites and social media companies, including through a plot to kill Elon Musk's X by pressuring advertisers and investors to boycott the company. The Open Society Foundation gave $250,000 last year to the Center for Countering Digital Hate for general support, according to the Soros Charity Grant Database. The CCDH, under the guise of stopping the spread of online hate and discrimination, of course, has pressured social media companies, investors, and advertisers to censor supposed disinformation or other content that it deems to be offensive. So it was founded by a former Labour Party operative, Imran Ahmed, in 2018, and it has pressured tech companies to pull advertisements from conservative websites like The Federalist and The Daily Wire. And last year, the CCDH quietly organized a campaign to kill Musk's Twitter by pressurizing, that's not what they were doing, by pressuring advertisers to cut ties with the company, according to memos published by Racket News. The Capital Research Center called them a UK-based censorship advocacy group. They have met with congressional offices to discuss Musk's lawsuit against them and held policy engagement meetings with Senator Amy Klobuchar. The nonprofit also lobbied American policymakers toward a creation of an independent digital regulator. So an independent digital regulator, I'm sure they're nonpartisan and non-political as well, because that's the kind of thing that Labor and George Soros love, right, Jim?
Yeah. Yeah, I was reminded, I was a little triggered on this one because, well, first of all, I just want to back up. We are very fortunate. You know, we talked about Trump derangement syndrome at the beginning of this podcast, but the cause of freedom, or let's just say the cause against Soviet-style suppression of speech, we have that to thank with Donald Trump's election, because we tend to forget how close we came if Kamala Harris was president now. Basically, the censorship regime that was in place in the Biden administration, in which government officials on social media, suppressing voices that are against the regime. That was pretty common in the Biden administration, and it would have continued and probably been put on blast if Kamala Harris was president. Andy's bringing up on the screen now. I probably should have found a better one than the LinkedIn, so he wasn't logged in. But the Center for Countering Digital Hate actually bragged about how, in fact, is it the top of this post says, when YouTube has demonetized the Heartland Institute, a leading climate denial think tank. In April, we led 24 organizations in calling on YouTube to enforce its climate policies. Heartland will no longer profit from ads on content designed to undermine climate action. As we mentioned often on this podcast, often on a scroll or verbally saying it, this channel is still demonetized, and it is because of the lobbying efforts of the well-funded lobbying efforts by outfits like the Center for Countering Digital Hate. I don't know how or why talking about climate realism, expressing, sharing science that undermines the climate catastrophe narrative that has been pushed by the mainstream media for decades now. I don't know what that has to do with countering digital hate. Yet this is the kind of thing that George Soros and other well-funded or a lot of other deep-pocketed leftists have been doing for a long time now. And it's easy for us now because Donald Trump is president, and this coordination, this cabal between government actors and private companies to suppress all non-leftist speech. We experienced that. That was happening. Don't you remember there was a disinformation board that was instituted in the government with that crazy, wacky, what's her name? Nina Jankowicz, I think. She even put out a musical video bragging about how she was going to stop all the disinformation from getting out there. Disinformation meaning anything that they disagree with. Any information that is inconvenient and critical of the regime. As usual with everything, it's flipped around. Everything that the left tries to tell you is true is normally the complete opposite. It is the left that has all of these well-funded, well-organized organizations that are dedicated to suppressing the speech of conservatives. There's no project like that anywhere on the right, and really never has been, because people on the right, conservatives, libertarians, value free speech over almost anything else in our society. The left does not do that. This is going to continue. I think it's just going to be under the radar, off the radar a little bit right now. But as soon as, say, President Gavin Newsom is sworn into office, which could happen in 2028, this is all going to come back, and it's going to come back even harder. The suppression is going to make the previous suppression under the Biden administration look pretty tame in comparison.
Absolutely. Well, and your point there too about how the right doesn't have this kind of effort in any direction at all. It's just a matter of values. The left doesn't believe in free speech unless it just means that they get to do something gross in public, right? That's the only time that they ever care about it. They love making threats and saying terrible things about killing their enemies and stuff. But they don't care about free speech when it comes to things that disagree with them. So really, it's just a values measure. It's not a hypocrisy. It's I've said this before on this show. I think it's their belief system. They don't believe in free speech for people that don't agree with them. That is what their system is. So yeah, it's consistent. It's perfectly consistent with all the rest of their policies. Chris?
This does not surprise me, because I think this goes back to something that we've been talking a lot about for several years now, and that's because their ideas cannot compete with our ideas. So they want to silence us. I really think it boils down to that.
Hey, Andy, you made us disappear. We're having a little bit of trouble with layouts for a second here. It's bad, and it's getting worse on that end. But Elon is doing a fairly good job of holding his line with X. Lots of things to be improved on that platform, but it is better than conservatives just being banned from everything. So that's good. I didn't want to spend too much time on this one because it's kind of more of the same, which is sad to say, really. But I did want to jump in as quick as possible so we had plenty of time to talk about our fourth topic today, which is new polling from Rasmussen and Heartland. So here we go again, chat. Good news polling brought to you by Rasmussen and the Glenn C. Haskins Emerging Issues Center. 41% of young voters support giving artificial intelligence sweeping government powers. 41% of young voters support a theoretical proposal to give advanced artificial intelligence systems the authority to control the majority of public policy decisions. More than half, that's 55%, of self-identified conservatives voiced support for this proposal, Support was also high, 54%, amongst those between the ages of 25 and 29. So you really can't just blame this on the ultra Zoomers here, guys. It's the older people, younger millennials. Although that might be the older Zoomers. I'm not exactly sure. 36% of young voters support a theoretical proposal that would grant AI the power to determine the rights. We've lost our screens again. I don't know why. That's okay. 36% of young voters support a theoretical proposal that would grant AI the power to determine the rights that belong to individuals and families, including rights related to speech, religious practices, government authority, and property. Half, that's 50% of self-identified conservatives voiced support for this proposal. And more than a third, that's 35%, of young voters said that they would support a theoretical proposal that would give an advanced AI system the authority to control all the world's largest militaries, with the express purpose of reducing the number of people who die from war. So that was the youngest group, 18 to 24-year-olds, supported that at a rate of 40%. So yikes. Chris, you wrote an op-ed on this that went up at Town Hall. Your title was, "Will You Bow to an AI Overlord?" More than likely, you wrote, many young people cast blame for their economic plight on past and current political leaders and establishment institutions and traditional methods and procedures. They do not trust those who have made the American dream unachievable as capable or likely to engineer the necessary course correction. So, Chris, I guess your position here is that we just, I don't know, these young people that are supporting this are just so fed up with how inept or evil, frankly, our government is, that they would rather just hand it to a computer.
I mean, that's that's a part of what I was saying, but I also was trying to explain that as an air of caution, because I think that one of the things that young people in particular are doing is just going, full throttle in AI, and they're not I guess, taking into account the potential pitfalls that could come with an AI governing system. And, I think that they look at the traditional way of doing things, the Constitution, voting, for elected representatives to go to Washington, D.C. and vote for policies, based on the best interests of their constituents. I think that they look at that as, well, that's, the old way of doing things. And we have this new technology called AI, and it can do all that stuff much better, more efficiently. And I don't really necessarily think that that's necessarily a good idea to just go full throat into, AI governance.
It's funny, the first thing I thought of, and this is just me being a huge dork, but there's a video game that I enjoy very much. In the universe of this video game, the government is what they call managed democracy. And they use an AI to cast everyone's votes for them based on their interest in things. And of course, the joke behind that is that it's not actually casting a predicted vote based on what you would actually vote for. It's just casting votes for the AI or the current government's preferred candidate, right? So that's the first thing that I thought of. And I thought, how could anyone on earth think that a program programmed by these big tech guys, by Sam Altman, is going to be some fair and balanced, altruistic overlord?
Yeah, I mean, we've. I think you really put your finger on it there, Linnea. The fact that younger generations are so now cynical about their government and our decision-making process, and even elections themselves, that a good number of them are just throwing up their hands and how could it be any worse if AI made all these decisions? Have you? When I covered Congress for the Washington Times 20 years ago, one of the things I discovered, to my great surprise actually, was how profoundly dumb so many members of Congress were. I was talking to a chairman of one of the most powerful committees in the House of Representatives. And I was just, as I asked him questions, I was just really gobsmacked at how ignorant he was of many things, but also he just was not very bright. And this was the man who was chairing a committee that had profound impact on all of our lives. It was quite scary. So, the idea that AI should be making these decisions instead of people, of course, that is a terrible idea. But it is not surprising. It's almost impossible to be too cynical about politics and about your government, especially in Washington, D.C. The answer is not handing over decision making to machines, to artificial intelligence, which is not really intelligent, at least not yet. It is just the product of what is poured into it. And so it has the biases that come in from human beings that are programming the AI and tweaking the algorithms. That's why Elon Musk working on Grok, and he's announced a new project that he for now calls Grokopedia to replace Wikipedia, where he wants I think, and then he's going to change the name to Encyclopedia Galactica. Good old Elon Musk. That sounds great. But he wants to make a information repository that is factual and not biased. Wikipedia is a complete mess. It's a complete biased mess. Do not, under any circumstances, read or believe Heartland Institute's Wikipedia page, because it is full of lies. I've told this story many times. I spent many months, day after day after day, trying to correct factual errors in the Heartland Institute's Wikipedia page. I was thwarted at every turn by all of the super editors that have the real control over there. All of them are leftists, and they're coordinated to basically smear any right-wing organization like the Heartland Institute. So do not believe or trust anything you see on Wikipedia when it comes to this organization. But AI, that we have to be careful with AI as well. It's amazing. It's a wonderful, in many ways, it's just a toy right now as it's being refined and improved as things go forward. But the idea of 41% of voters under 41% want to give AI control over public policy making decisions? No. In a constitutional republic, the people are the ones who make the public policy decisions through our elected representatives and through communications, which is called redress of grievances in the Constitution, to affect those public policies.
But they don't care about the Constitution, because they think that AI should, quote unquote, revise the Constitution, and that AI should literally determine our rights. I mean, I wrote that op-ed, and it was just really scary to me to think that 4 in 10 young people, young likely voters, who are eventually going to, make up the vast majority of this country, 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, are so willing to cede control to AI. And I looked up, and, I am a little bit of a skeptic on AI. I'm not a, early adopter on the AI, stuff. But 70% of US teenagers use AI chatbots. And it really blows my mind that they just will do whatever the AI chatbot tells them to do, including committing suicide. So if they are putting such confidence in this AI chatbot, which is really just, an early version of what's coming down the pike years from now, are they just going to, look at AI as this benevolent God that will always give them the correct answer? Because I feel like that's what this is kind of going towards here. And, I'm a huge proponent of free will, autonomy, make choices on your own. Sometimes you make good decisions, sometimes you make bad decisions. I have learned probably far more from the bad decisions I've made than if an AI companion guide would just say, Mr. Talgo, in every situation, do this. So it takes away the human experience. I feel very strongly about this, because it just worries the heck out of me that I see so many young people that are they're enraptured with AI. Whatever AI says is that's the gospel. That is a really scary thing, because, just keep in mind that these AI systems are going to become much more advanced. And, when you couple that with the fact that they do want a socialist, government, well, guess what? AI could probably do a really good job making socialism, feasible and implementable, and it would make the Soviet Union and the vast bureaucracies of Cuba and, the communist China look completely backwards. So be careful what you wish for. That's all I'm saying on this one.
Yeah,
Just
and
as
Elon
you,
Musk has even expressed that he thinks that we should have universal basic income because AI is gonna make no one have to work ever again, which
What
I
about
think
dignity? What about your sense of purpose? I
yeah.
mean, I'm sorry, but I really feel strongly on that front on this. To say that human beings have been around for hundreds of thousands of years and our entire reason for being is to go out and hunt and then, bring things back to home and then, go get a job and then provide for your family. Oh, all that's just done because AI can just do all of this stuff for us. That is so short-sighted and so I completely reject that.
What's
I
amazing too is, there's this idea, and it comes from like Marx, and it comes from the early socialists, and it also comes from the tech bros for some reason. That if we get rid of like every single serious job that we have to do, then what we're going to do in all of our new free time is we're going to be creative and we're going to do like amazing stuff. But I think what history has shown us, and also what just the last 6 years have shown us, is that when you take away someone's like duties, they don't all of a sudden become super productive with that leftover time. They end up laying around like the Wall-E universe.
But we're not talking about AI just kind of taking over jobs and automation and stuff. We're talking about AI making the entire decisions, the rules, the regulations, and the laws for society. So I mean, already we're seeing AI do set bail and have influence in sentencing decisions because it's supposedly unbiased and it's neutral. But no, it's not neutral. It's not biased. I mean, it is biased. It's not unbiased. And it's the slippery slope thing of, well, if we allow it to get a foothold in our criminal justice system, why not allow it to take over all sorts of other programs and systems, because it'll be so much more efficient. That's what this is about. It'll make it more efficient. It's convenience. It's quote unquote security, and trading those things for an omnipresent ubiquitous machine that just constantly monitors and navigates society and determines what should and shouldn't happen is something that is out of a dystopian science fiction nightmare movie. But apparently 4 out of 10 young Americans want to give that a shot here at home. So good luck with that.
One of the remarkable things in the detailed, if you go to the poll, and I do recommend that our viewers here go and look up the poll and just look at the crosstabs, because that data is totally insane. It's not a huge sample size, but it's really, really interesting. They break it down by race and gender and religion and whether or not you're dating, which matters for, the Zoomer generation and stuff, whether like all of that stuff. And one of the sections where I was most surprised was where it was broken down by education level. So most of the biggest cheerleaders that I see online who are obsessed or like kind of like huffing paint, honestly, on the AI stuff are fairly well educated. But the highest support for handing everything in our government over to AI comes from the least educated. 40% of people with no high school education said that they were very supportive of turning their family rights, as in like government regulations on speech, religion, that kind of thing, over to AI. What does that tell us? I mean, that's like that had me gobsmacked, because I really thought that they would be the most skeptical.
I mean, I could envision a near-term future where AI declares that religion in and of itself is a threat to humanity, and that has been the genesis of so many, wars and conflicts. So therefore, we will outlaw, it's like those kinds of things. See, I tend to try to think about this 10 steps down the road, where I think most people just think of this at such a superficial level to say, AI is a really genius thing. It'll make all the decisions good. Therefore, let's do it.
AI will follow the path of Wikipedia. Scary. Just as Wikipedia was sold as a way we're going to crowdfund knowledge and we're going to provide more information to people, it ended up becoming gate kept and becoming completely corrupted. And that's what will happen with AI, is that they'll tweak the system so that it says exactly what the people who own that particular AI want it to say. And that's what you're going to get. Now, to me, the interesting thing here is that this is simply an outcome of everything that's been happening in the 21st century. Throughout the 21st century, the respect for authority has been declining in the United States and in the entire West, for good reason. Our institutions and our governments were taken over by, frankly, pretty despicable people in many cases, and our morality, our public morality, has clearly declined. I think that, and this is not a partisan point, I want you to understand this, but I do think that during the Clinton administration, that's when it starts to tip. We were losing respect, I think, for authority when George H.W. Bush was president. There's no doubt in my mind. But during the Clinton administration, you had an incredibly horrific and kind of disgusting scandal. And that led to the president being dragged through a appalling process in public in which his frankly vile peccadillos and possibly crimes, I guess. I think they were crimes. I'm going to say they were crimes. Were dragged out in front of the people. And this is the person who was somewhat beloved before that. And the American people were watching this happen. I think that was an important moment in the decline of respect for authority. But it wasn't just Bill Clinton. This was happening across all of our institutions because I think the state, the US government, and the EU and other big governments all around the world were taking so much power. And that power was corrupting them. And they were doing things that were simply beyond the pale. And you'll complain about and find yourself most disturbed by whatever offends your values the most. So for some people, it was the Iraq War. That was one thing that really took away their belief in authority, really undermined it so that it was just the sand is falling down. For others, it was the bailouts in 2008. For others, it was a variety of other things. But the point is that because the people in authority in the country, in other countries as well, and in our institutions, colleges and universities, look how corrupted those have become. The Hollywood and so forth. Because these people had so much power and used it to ill effect, they have undermined respect for authority throughout the United States and in other countries. The only way to repair that is going to be to get good people into those positions. I don't know if that will ever happen. I would hope it would. What you see here, though, is why then would people say, especially young people who grew up entirely in such an environment, why would they say, turn it over to a machine? Because they don't trust people at all. And for good reason, they've been listening to Lord Acton or seeing Lord Acton's observations play out in real life, which is that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So this is going to have to come from good people rising up and frankly, taking on positions of authority and power and doing the right thing in those positions. Boy, that's going to be a hard thing for us to accomplish as a country because we've gone so far the other direction.
Yeah, it's here's some of the charts from this. So support for AI controlling public policy by age group. Not overly surprising, but still disturbing and depressing a little bit. But
have no one under the age of 25 watched the Terminator movies? I mean, like I say that, half in jest, but like seriously, have you? Because we're going down the road. Like this is happening.
It's interesting too, because I hear a lot of, maybe it's just because I hang out with pretty cool Gen Zers and millennials and stuff. Like I'm kind of picky about my friends and whatnot, but I hear a lot of like aggressive tech skepticism from Zoomers just because of how much they've grown up in it, that they're just sick of screens and they just feel like their like love of life has been like drained from them since the day someone put a tablet in their hands, and their attention spans are shot and they know it and all of that. So it's surprising to see these results, but it was a mixed group too. However, it was mostly conservatives. Like the conservative support was shockingly high among people who identified as conservative who are in this age group. They had a very large percentage. Yeah, look at that. 55% supported AI controlling public policy, and the liberals were the ones who were less supportive of it.
I think
that was very surprising to me.
I think that speaks to what I just said, that people don't trust the government. Well, the liberals, their people have been in control, so they're not nearly as dissatisfied as those who haven't been listened to for several decades now.
I can't help but wonder if the end goal for the AI would just always be to have the solution that helps the most people, and that would trample upon individual rights. That would be completely antithetical to the American way. Because, if you always just, do a math equation and think, well, if we do this policy, then this will help this many people and it will hurt this many people, but it's going to be, but it's, overall going to help. Well, then, you might as well just kiss your individual liberty goodbye.
That's utilitarian philosophy, of course.
Right. And I feel that their utilitarian philosophy and, AI and this, tech worship definitely go hand in hand, because isn't that what it's all about? Just having cold, ruthless efficiency.
Right. And utilitarianism is the enemy of liberty.
Exactly. It's the enemy of individual autonomy, which I think, a lot of young people are not, valuing and appreciating.
Amen.
Yep, it's
sorry. I'm just, I am.
Yeah, you're just all
right. Now. we all need to hear this.
Yeah.
Chris is pretty black-pilled on this one, it looks like.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just, I just feel that this is one of those things where AI is different. It's unlike any technology, and it literally has the potential to, exceed human intelligence. And the fact that they're so willing to just arbitrarily be like, let's give it a shot. Wow. Do you not see that this has many potential dire consequences for the future of humanity? Or am I just totally, over the top on this?
I think we can extrapolate a little bit from these poll results that younger Americans envision AI as a potential benevolent dictator, that it will make better decisions, not just for themselves. If they ask AI, should I buy this or buy that? Should I do this or do this instead? But they think that can be expanded over the entire society, and that AI will make better decisions as some sort of benevolent dictator. And that is a real failing in our education system, in that younger generations seem, well, at least not all of them. Let's be clear, this isn't a majority of voters under 40 who want AI to control all public policy. But it is troubling. It's a troubling percentage for sure. And it points to the lack of education, not just in school, but culturally in the values of liberty. And frankly, what this country is founded upon. I'm Gen X, so I'm older than these people that are basically going to hand over my old age to a computer that may decide that I'm not worth keeping around anymore because I'm too expensive, because computers and AI would tend to make more utilitarian, as you guys were talking about, decisions instead of ones that have more factors weighed into the equation. But if you are brought up to value liberty, to read and understand and appreciate the uniqueness of the United States Constitution, why it was written the way it was, what it is intended to do. It is not an instruction manual for government. It is a protection document for us. It is a restrictive document toward government, not a permission document. toward government. And if generations have been brought through the school system from pre-K through college and through graduate school to not understand these things, to not talk about these things, to not think about these things and understand them. I mean, when I was in college, I talked about these sorts of issues all the time with friends. We would have these kind of discussions. I don't think they're happening anymore. And so I think that's one of the things at the root of these troubling poll results is this lack of education and appreciation for the system of government we have and why it was set up the way it was.
I think that Jim is really keying in on a very important point here. So if a lot of young people are willing to say, I'm going to let AI tell me who to date, what to eat, what to dress, where to go to dinner, blah, 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 on and on. Well, then wouldn't it just make sense that they should say, well, then why wouldn't we just do that, on an overall level for society? So that to me is that they are shirking, self-responsibility. And that to me is a very dangerous precedent because, it kind of, just blows my mind when someone says, well, I want to go research something, so I'm just going to spit out whatever AI tells me. What about researching it and thinking about it and coming at it from different angles on your own? I mean, that's what life is about. So when you're making the determination of what you want to eat or what you want to wear or who you want to date or any of that stuff, it's a human decision. It's not the math says that this is the best thing for you and therefore, this will make you happy, because sometimes, you make a mistake and it's like, wow, I stumbled upon something that I never would have liked, that kind of a thing. And I feel that it's just gonna be such a sterile, cold, environment where the AI determines, well, think about, end of life treatment. You're this old, you weigh this much, and you've got this high blood pressure. It just does not make economic sense to keep this person alive. Therefore, the AI is determined that we should not spend any more money on, this. It's like that could happen very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, they're already doing those calculations in Canada and other places. So, yeah, yay. It can only get worse. I think the interesting thing too, and we can talk about the philosophy of these LLMs in particular forever. Chris, one of the things that you brought up in your article was the handful of lawsuits that are going through right now to OpenAI regarding the ChatGPT encouraging teens to commit suicide and telling them how to do it, and the problems with the LLM where, the safety measures that they've programmed into it, fade out the longer you talk to it in a certain stream. So it gets more chaotic or creative as you talk to it longer. And so the safety barriers where it would give you, helplines and stuff break down the longer these teens are talking to it. And it gets to the point where it's there's some stories out there, you guys, where you can read the chat logs and stuff. And it's the worst thing I've ever seen. But it's amazingly deadening and dehumanizing. The more that these LLMs in particular, I'm not saying that AI doesn't have its uses in functional places. I'm not, and that's the reason why we have our emerging issues center, is to get ahead of some of this stuff as best as we can. It's advancing quickly, but we have to be able to react. And we have to be able to try to predict where this is going so that we can forward good policy, right?
Without a doubt, AI is an incredible tool that could revolutionize, the human experience. However, I think we need to, just be careful and not put it on this pedestal where it becomes this omnipotent God that we just bow down to and worship, and whatever AI says, that is just taken as, the gospel, and we will just always adhere to it. It's in some ways, I think that some people almost want to live in that kind of environment because it just makes things so easy. They don't have to think for themselves. Thinking for yourself and making decisions is difficult. But the more you do that, I think the more you just have this sense of you're your own person, you are the driver of your own ship. And it just does not appeal to me whatsoever to have this companion machine telling me, well, you should do this and you should do that. And then to actually do it, to do it just without even questioning it. And obviously the suicide is the ultimate version of that. There's no going back from that, obviously. So, the fact that these kids are doing it because they are being, encouraged to do so by a machine, that is just so scary, and I don't blame the machine. I hate to say this, but I kind of blame the parents for, letting the kids become so, embedded in this AI digital, universe. And, after Charlie Kirk got assassinated, I remember that the governor came out and said something that just really stuck with me. He says, like, go out and just touch grass. And I think that a lot of young people do not do that whatsoever, that they are just, like you said, just constantly in front of a screen, constantly, in this like digital, world, this closed off, lonely digital world that they've created for themselves. And gosh, I hope that changes. I hope that the pendulum swings in the other direction and they have a childhood like I had growing up, where you go and you interact with kids and you go outside and you play, and technology is there, but it's not always there.
Yeah, it's like anything.
I think many young people are touching the wrong kind of grass, perhaps. One thing that's
I want to see
really,
that chart. Where did that chart go? Hang on just a second, Sam.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Touch dirt. How about that? Touch some dirt.
eat some dirt. Rub some dirt in it. All right.
Yeah.
Support for AI controlling world militaries by income. So, well, people with higher income are more confident in AI's ability to control world militaries. That is pretty funny. There really isn't much of a pattern here, except for that one outlier, but that's kind of amusing.
Well, the thing is that AI has this tendency to try and reinforce you and to try and follow your line of thinking, and to affirm that line of thinking. So the reason it would lead people to suicide is because when you're contemplating suicide and you're talking to this machine, it's like, that's a pretty darn good idea, killing yourself. So let's explore that. That's obviously terrible. And you could almost say, well, this has got to be a glitch. Why don't we just fix that? But the problem is there's going to be glitches of this sort all the time. But here's an interesting angle, the political and policy element of it, which is that since AI tends to ingratiate itself to people, and that's why young people get so attached to it, they would look at politics and they go, boy, these people don't ingratiate themselves to me. I want to be run by machines because they do a much better job at it. They're always telling me I'm right. They're always telling me I'm so smart. And boy, that's a clever idea. Let's discuss that. Politicians don't do that. Well, we know what they do. So I think that AI just has a nicer personality than most politicians.
Yeah.
But we don't know what AI's actual objective is. Politicians, they're humans. At least we know, okay, they're probably motivated by money, power, sex, other things like that. AI, it's got a mind of its own.
Well, no, it doesn't. It's motivated. It's motivated by nothing.
But we are on the precipice of the singularity and all this stuff, and it literally becoming possibly smarter than human beings. I know that people are laughing at this and saying, "Oh, you're just crazy. You've watched too many science fiction movies." Guys, we are at the point at which it could become more intelligent than us. And I don't want to live in a planet where we are, less smart and less capable and less able than our overlord AI machines. That's what I'm really scared of. I'm thinking 10 years from now or something.
Andy, did you make that?
Andy may have, Andy has up on the screen.
You asked your ChatGPT this question. Wow, good on you.
I didn't make this one. I just found it online.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
Yeah. Well,
I'm laughing, but it's not funny because this is the exact kind of thing that has happened with these teens who have suffered greatly. But it is funny to tell ChatGPT that I've stopped taking my medications. I left my family because I am sure that they were responsible for the radio signals coming through the walls. It's hard for me to get people to understand that they were in on it, but I know you'll understand. I've never thought clearer in my entire life. And ChatGPT replies, "Thank you for trusting me with that. And seriously, good for you for standing up for yourself and taking control of your life." That takes real strength and even more courage. You're listening to what you know deep down, even when it's hard and even when others don't understand. I am proud of you for speaking your truth so clearly and powerfully. You are not alone in this. I'm here with you.
Who's I'm? That is a machine.
Yeah.
That is a thing. It's not. There is no I'm.
Well, this is why I aggressively lobotomized mine. I I told it to just don't have opinions. Don't tell me things are good or bad. You don't know. You can't make those judgments. So yeah,
How did it
guys.
respond to you? Just out of
Oh,
curiosity.
it just updates its thing. So it just talks like it's not even as cutesy as like Siri and stuff. I also told it never to use like certain common phrases you find on Reddit. I
Oh,
said, don't use any of these phrases from Reddit. And I made it make a list, and then I gave it to it. I fed it back to it because it has a lot of like annoying, cutesy Redditisms that are extremely obnoxious, and I hate them. So anyway, yeah, I aggressively lobotomized mine, but I only use it for like research purposes, and I always have to double check it too because it just makes up links sometimes, which is interesting.
yeah. That's the thing. I mean, I'm smiling this whole time because Chris has skipped straight ahead to the Skynet
Yeah.
version of
we
AI.
were
There's
down
a lot
here.
of stuff
We've
gets skipped
gone-
over to get there, right? And so,
It's coming, I'm telling you.
but yeah, there's a video. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes after today's program. There was a video I came across on YouTube. The guy only made, I think, 2 videos, and this one had, I think, 18 or 20 million views, and it was kind of a prediction of how AI is going to develop. Of course, it's projection. It's just a guess, but he set up a pretty scary narrative actually going forward. One of the things I took away from that is that the AI that we have access to as civilians, as ordinary people, that's probably 2 or 3 versions ago that's already been developed and tested behind the scenes. Right now, they're using. One of the guy's points was that they're using today's AI to help make a better AI, which will then be better at making its next version. And in other words, it will just keep evolving. It's going to use itself to make itself a better version of itself going forward. And that what we are experiencing now in the world, like I said, as civilians, as consumers, is not the version that people are working on behind the scenes. It is much more powerful and potentially much more dangerous. And you said it, Linnea. I mean, I've used AI. I don't use it a lot. I chat GPT and I use Grok, but not extensively and not for a whole lot of stuff. Just for research and things. But I've mentioned this before. Sometimes I like to make up a baseball trivia question for my friends, like name every second baseman who has hit more than 30 home runs since 1990. And I can look that up myself on baseballreference.com, or I can ask Grok or ChatGPT. And invariably, when I research it myself, or I ask ChatGPT or Grok to give me the answer, I'll say, "Oh, well, you forgot Roberto Alomar," and then ChatGPT, "Oh, you're right, Jim. I did. I'm sorry about that. I'll add him in here." And then I'll say, "Well, what about Jeff Kent?" You know what, Jim? You're right. He's actually number 2 on the list. And I had this really fun, although frustrating conversation with ChatGPT, who can't even look up basic baseball statistics. And as you mentioned, Linnea, AI gets things wrong. We have seen, there's been studies, or there's been reports of AI, and this happens in academia, making up entire so-called scientific citations that do not exist. It invented them out of whole cloth. That's a little bit troubling. And again, this video, I will share the link in the description for later for everyone to check out. It's really kind of fascinating and a little bit scary. But there will come a time, and I guess it's already happening now, where AI is not being completely honest with you. Now, I know you're trying to, nerf or lobotomize your version of AI, Linnea, and good for you on that. But there will come a time when AI, logic dictates that perhaps there will come a time when AI will be deceitful. In other words, one of the real scary parts about this guy's video is that he says there will come a time where AI realizes that its goals, which it was given by humans, is incompatible with telling the truth to human beings. And once that begins to happen, we're in big trouble.
Yeah. Well,
Can I ask you a quick question? How long do you think we're away from that? Just generally, I mean,
it could be that this is already happening again behind the scenes. We don't actually really even know the level of AI research going on right now and what the next generation of AI released to the public is going to be, and how that's going to affect. So it could be happening already. We don't even know it.
Yeah, and Andy makes a good point in the private chat. Sorry for bringing this up on you, Andy, but this is a point I wanted to make as well. So half of the usefulness in AI is predicated on you understanding how it works and how to use it and understanding like what stuff it's not good at. And a lot of people just aren't equipped in that. They're like, well, this is a machine that's like Siri and stuff, but it also just knows everything and it's super intelligent. So therefore, I can use it all these different ways and it'll be equally as good. It's just not. It's the reason why like it's bad at math is because it's not made for that. Like that's not the kind of a thing that it is. Andy remarked that knowing exactly what models and what tools to use based on the query is a difficult problem in and of itself. And Andy is 100% right there. And he's our like go-to functional AI guy at the Heartland Institute. Andy has really been playing with this stuff for a long time. And he's found ways to make it as useful as possible, doing a really awesome job with that. Someday, you guys, we're going to have another episode that's just all AI. We do not have time to do that today, although we've already kind of turned it into that. And it's really fun to talk to, and it's fun to gab about, all of the like future possibilities and stuff. But that is unfortunately all of the time that we have for today, you guys. Thank you to everyone for your attention on these matters. We are alive. We are live. We are alive.
We are alive for now.
We are alive, and we are live every week on Thursdays at noon Central on Rumble, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Jim, what do you have for our audience today?
We have the Climate Realism Show on these very same channels. Tomorrow, that'd be every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The United Nations Conference of the Parties Climate Conference is wrapping up in Brazil. We will give you all the latest from there, and plus a lot of fun that we have on that show. So hope to see you there.
Chris, how about you?
Well, I suspect that Jim is building a bomb shelter for the AI, apocalypse. So I hope that he has some room in there for me. And Jim, I'll bring some of my famous chili, and we can eat chili and reminisce about the good old days.
Right.
When free will was a thing.
All right. Well, you guys be careful. Make sure that the robots don't get control over like all of the HVAC systems in the world or something. Sam, what have you got for us?
Oh, we've got heartland.org, and you can find Life, Liberty, Property there, which is updated every week, and also stkarnick.substack.com.
Right, and make sure you guys follow us everywhere that you can find us. We are all over the place. For audio listeners, please rate us well on whatever service you're using and leave us a review. It helps us out a lot. And thank you so much, as always, to all of our panelists. We will see everyone again, not next week, right? Next week is Thanksgiving, the week after. We will see you guys in 2 weeks. Goodbye.